All right, it is now time to ask for interviews. In this exercise, we're going to talk about how exactly you go about doing that. So, the problems this exercise is going to solve for you. Number one, if you're unsure how to ask someone for an interview, we're going to show you exactly how to do it. If you're if you want to increase your conversion rate on the number of people who actually agree to do interviews with you, and actually conduct them with you, then this is going to help that as well. And then finally, you're going to give yourself a timeline. It's not going to be like necessarily an aggressive, hard deadline unless you want it to be, but you're going to give yourself a timeline to start executing these interviews on so you can help hold yourself accountable to doing them. All right, so let's cover how to ask, and we're going to cover basically two different ways to ask. One is if it's a cold contact, so you're sending them some sort of message, email, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, how to ask for an interview via a cold contact. And the second is how to ask in person. I'm going to talk real quick about what to do about um, introductions, right? Introductions are not a way that I recommend to get your interviews, and here's why. While they're low-hanging fruit and it's likely that you'll be able to get some interviews, it's very rare that the person who is introducing you to a friend or a colleague um, is introducing you to the person who actually is in your channel, right? So let's say you wanted to go sell something to a large company, AT&T, and you've got a friend who works at AT&T, and they might be able to get you an introduction to one of their friends. What are the chances that one of their friends is the exact person in the exact role that you're looking to talk to? It's very, very slim. So unless you can get an introduction to the specific person that you want to talk to that fits into your customer segment that you've identified from your scaling exercise, then just skip the interview entirely. Skip the introduction entirely. Because an interview with someone who's not in your segment is oftentimes actually worse than not interviewing at all because it will lead you down the wrong path. So let's go ahead and skip the interviews. The other reason, skip the introductions. The other reason is whether or not someone will have a discussion with us about their problem is an indicator as to whether or not this is a real problem. So just because we can go and pick low-hanging fruit doesn't mean that we should, because that low-hanging fruit, it may not taste so good at the end of the day. So what we want to do is we want to go and jump for the fruit that's a little harder to reach, because if we get it, it will be that much sweeter. It means that, oh, this customer is ready to solve a problem, or is more likely to be ready to solve a problem. So don't be afraid to ask cold contacts. In fact, that's the way that I recommend going about doing these interviews. All right, so let's start with cold contacts, and I'm going to give you 3 rules for making cold contacts and asking for interviews. Uh, these, by the way, apply to the forums of email, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere that you're reaching out to someone that you don't have any real connection with. So, the first rule, number one, it's got to be personal. The contact you make has to be specific to the person you're making it with. It can't be a generalized spam email message. Let me show you. All right, so here's an email that I received that actually got my attention once I received it because it's got the name of my blog in here. And so, okay, fine. Hi there. My name is Dwayne. I found your website. I'm searching for advertisement opportunities for my client site. Oh, that could be interesting. Your website is perfect for my posting for my client. Okay, so by the time I reach this sentence, I have given up. This is just a generic email that's gone out to thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, so there's nothing really interesting here for me. Now, I bring this up as an example because it would have been so easy for Dwayne to actually get my attention and maybe even elicit a reply. All he would have had to done is say, "Hi, my name is Dwayne. I found your website, comma, and this article was particularly interesting." Right? He already went to the effort of finding my email address and pulling out the name of my blog. If he would have just referenced one blog article that would have been specific to me, I would have thought, wow, he's reaching out to me individually and he thinks that this might be an interesting opportunity for both of us. So it's just something that little can make a message personal and highly increase your conversion rate as far as asking for interviews. Now, the line, so what's interesting is because he didn't do that, I perceived this as basically an unsolicited email. And so I marked it as spam. So you want to be really careful when you're going out and making cold contacts with people. There's a very fine line between, unsolicited email and then asking for an interview. So by making it personal and really reaching out to them and touching them and sending individual emails, it's much less likely that at least I would indicate that your email is spam, and I think that's going to hold true for other people you reach out to. All right, so that's personalizing the email. Now, second, you're going to keep it short. I'm sure we've all received these emails that are super long and epic, and they're going to take 10 minutes to read. Don't be that person. Send a short email so it can be really easy for your person to read, understand, and get back to you. So here's a little 5-sentence formula I use for cold interview requests. Number one, something about them, something personal to them, again, like we talked about before. Sentence number two, something about both of you that ties you together, a reason why you just said what you just said. So Dwayne could have said, hey, I really enjoyed this article. I found it really applicable, and I've been applying it in my own startup this way. Right? So that would have been a way for him to say something about me personally and then tie us together and sort of start building a bond between the two of us. So that's what you're going to do. Third sentence, a little bit about what you're doing, what you're working on. You're going to keep this pretty vague because in this email, we don't want to point them directly at the problem you hypothesize. You want to kind of leave it open so that they aren't led down a specific path. But you're going to give them a hint about the kinds of problems you're interested in solving. Number four, what you're offering to them. You're going to make some sort of offer to them. And I don't recommend that this is like a tangible thing, that this is like something worth money or something, some sort of free goodie. Because, again, what we're trying to measure here in part is how interesting is this problem to this person? Are they willing to give up their time to talk with us? So if we're having to bribe them to talk with us, this may not be a problem that we're interested in solving. I'll show you a little example about what you're offering. And then number five, you're going to make the ask. You're going to ask them for time to actually conduct the interview. So here's an example of a cold email. I've sent many that are just like this, and it reads, subject is just remote coding, very simple. It's about the subject we're talking about, and in this case, the coding has to do with medical records. So the person's name, I read your article about volunteering. I even linked to the article here, your professional skills in Guatemala. It was really inspiring. That's some stroking, some say, hey, this was really great. I'm looking to do more travel, and you've got me thinking about incorporating volunteering when I do. So boom, all of a sudden, I said something personal about them, and now I am connecting them with me. I have a software company trying to improve medical record coding. This is what I'm doing, okay? Next line. I'm not looking to sell anything. I highly recommend you steal that exact line. But since you have so much expertise with remote coding, I'd love to get your advice on our product so we don't build the wrong thing. All right, finally, the ask. If you're available, I'd love to chat for just 20 minutes, Thursday or Friday morning. All right? So what in here, hopefully you got the gist. It's short, it's personal, it talks about both of us. The thing that's valuable, there's actually two things that are valuable in here. Number one, there's the example. There's the example. I'm going to talk about valuable in just a little bit. So there's the example. All right, next up, what's valuable about this email? There are actually two things that are valuable in this email. Number one, I'm talking to improve medical record coding, and the person I'm sending this email to, Sam, it's presumably his or her job to actually do remote coding for medical records. So already I'm hinting that I'm going to improve something about their world. So this is value number one. If they take the time to talk with me, they may help improve their job. All right. Now notice how I'm being very vague. I'm not talking specifically about what I want to do so that I don't taint the interview, but this is just, I'm generally going to improve this area. The second thing of value to them, I'm talking about how they have so much expertise and how they can prevent me from building the wrong thing. I'm playing to them as an expert, right? And they are. They're my customer. They know this. They are the expert. And what I want is their expert advice. So something that a lot of people enjoy doing is taking their years of expertise and then offering it to help other people. So you are going to just give them an opportunity to do that, to help you. And so that's the other thing that's valuable here. Again, I'm not offering them money or anything. I'm offering them the opportunity to share their expertise with me, be an expert, and hopefully prevent me from building the wrong thing. Now, I've used this exact email or something very similar to it to get upwards of 50% response rate. So that's a really high number. Don't worry if you're not getting response rates that high. I just want to let you know that it is possible. You should see response rates, between the 20% and 50%, but anything above 20%, and you're looking okay. All right, I wanted to show you what this looks like in 140 characters, so Twitter format. This is, I'm just tweeting to a person directly. So, Dr. Phoebes, first, dig your tat. So this is just me saying something personal to them so they know it's not a generic message. Second, have some questions about helping kids on the spectrum. This is referring to the autism spectrum. I'm looking for advice so I can get it right, up to chat. So that's a cold contact in 140 characters. All right, so that's how you do the cold contacts, cold requests. Now let's talk about how to do in-person interviews. These are going to be slightly different. So the first advice I'm going to give you is rule number one, go to where people are waiting. Okay, where people are waiting. So you've probably been approached, or you've been walking down the street, and someone on a street corner has a clipboard, and you see them, from 50 feet away, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to be looking at my phone. I need to be busy. I do not want to be bothered by this person. I do not recommend you do what those people are doing. Don't stand where people are walking and trying to do something. Instead, go where people are already waiting. Where people are waiting, you might actually be doing them a favor by having a conversation with them. You'll be some form of entertainment, right? So places that I go, public transit. So if you've got a subway around you, go to where people are waiting. Not where they're walking to the subway, but where they're waiting for the subway. If you've got anywhere that's long lines that's around you, so amusement parks, obviously they have super long lines. Concert tickets, either in the beer line or when they're buying tickets or going to concerts, going to movies. I once had a friend who was working on a startup that had to do with indie films, and we were talking about doing customer development, and he mentioned just offhandedly that the San Francisco International Film Festival was in town, and I sort of looked at him and said, why are we sitting here? And so we dropped what we were doing. We went and grabbed some pads of paper and went down to the film festival and literally just interviewed the people standing in line to get into the film festival. We must have done literally 100 interviews in that one day, just by talking to people who were standing in line. Sporting events are another great place to go find people. Just think about where people are waiting. Airports. Oh my gosh, there's so much waiting at airports. Waiting for your luggage, waiting for the rental car, waiting for someone to pick you up. There's a lot of waiting down there, so definitely go down there. Okay, number two. The number two piece of advice I can give you for in-person interviews are bring props. Bring something that makes you just a little more trustworthy than the random person on the street. So, for example, this is my friend Josh, and if Josh approaches you, you might be a little freaked out to have a discussion with him. Like, this guy kind of looks like the Joker a little bit. So why would I want to talk to him? Well, Josh looks a lot different when he's wearing flowers, or when he's carrying flowers. So just with the simple act, he bought a half dozen roses, and he walks around, and all of a sudden, every girl is not only wants to be interviewed, they're actually calling to him like, hey, are those for me, right? So they're getting your attention. So a little prop, something like flowers, something as simple as flowers, can go a long way to just making your interaction a little more friendly and make it a little easier for you to talk to people. Another example of a prop, this is me doing a customer interview in the subway. So this is on actually a light rail up in Seattle, but also I'm heading from the airport. So you can see my hand is actually on a piece of luggage. Now, inside that piece of luggage is literally nothing. There's nothing inside there. But I look like I belong, right? I'm on the subway or on the light rail, and I'm talking to another person, another airport rider, airport leaver. But even though my prop is totally empty, so I already have sort of validation, and we're having a great conversation about her problems with respect to travel. All right, so now that you know the tips on how to ask for interviews, let's ask for some. And actually, what we're going to do next is we're going to put together a timeline for you to go ask your customers for interviews. So where we're going to start is with our previous worksheet. If you recall, we had a couple different sets of channels that we were going to go look into. The first one was our people who were struggling with Fitbit's Facebook page. And then we also had the Product Hunt Fitbit owners, and we had the Fitbit users at the jogging check. All right, so we got these three different channels. And what I want... All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to put in your early adopter description and your problem description up at the top, just like you've done before. And then for number 2, you can either put 1 or you can put 2 primary interview channels. These are where you're going to start looking for your interviews. Now, you can do 1. I highly recommend just starting with 1. But in my case, I'm going to have 2 channels that I can actually do in parallel. So no more than that you're going to focus on at the very beginning. So I'm going to put down my strugglers on Fitbit's Facebook page and my Fitbit users at the jogging track. And I'll show you why I'm doing those 2 at once in just a little bit. Now, these next fields are going to be just like we did last time. I will request 30 interviews by, and then you're going to put a date in here. So I will request 30 interviews from people struggling with meeting their fitness goals on Fitbit's Facebook page by August 7th. Yeah? All right, and then same deal here. I'm going to schedule them by this date and conduct 5 by this date. So in this case, I'm going to schedule my 10 interviews by August 10th, and then I'm actually going to conduct my 5 interviews and be finished by the very special day, August 13th. Okay, so for my Fitbit users at the jogging track, what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to, while I wait for people to get back to me and schedule their interviews, in between here, I'm going to head on down to the jogging track, and I'm going to request, schedule, and conduct all of my interviews. I'll start on the 8th and be done by the 9th, and then I will be completely done. So in between this little space here, I will actually interview at least 5 people here as well. All right. For number 3, what I want you to do now is I want you to come up with a backup plan. And we're going to do this for all of our experiments going forward, because having a backup plan is going to make it so much faster if it turns out, let's say we try these 2 things and we just can't find anybody to interview. For some reason, either no one's talking to us or there's no one there, maybe no one at the jogging track actually is wearing Fitbits. Something happens and they're just not working at all. Having a backup plan means you're not going to get stuck sort of scratching your head and wondering, oh man, should I even be doing this? Maybe I should be a real job. We're going to set your backup plan in motion now so you know exactly what to do in case one of these exercises fails. So in my case, I'm going to put down the 3rd interview channel. So you're going to have at least 1 here. So you should have at least 1 here and at least 1 here. You can have up to 2 in both spots. So what's your backup plan? And in my case, let's say I go and by the 13th, I can't conduct all of the interviews that I wanted to. So I'm going to roll on to my Product Hunt Fitbit owners, and I will request 30 of those by the 15th. So again, that's only if I don't meet this criteria. I'll roll down here. And then I'm going to schedule 10 interviews, and I'm going to conduct my 5 interviews. So there you have it. Now you actually have a timeline to go and start requesting interviews and schedule them and conduct them. So next up, we're going to talk about what to actually ask during interviews. But before we get there, let's sort of recap what we've done. We've solved a couple problems for you. Number 1, if you're unsure how to request an interview, you now know exactly what to ask. Number 2, we've increased your conversion rate by making your cold contacts personal, short, and valuable. You're going to highly increase the conversion rate of people who give you or respond positively to your request for interviews. We've also given you a timeline. So now you can hold yourself accountable to getting out of the building and start talking to customers. So congratulations. You now know how to ask for interviews. Next up, we're going to talk about what to ask during those interviews.